So I know wine and beer are coming up, so we're going to make it as quick as possible. But this is an important moment for us because it's the announcement of the Vintage Report Innovation Award. So I would like to welcome on stage Adam Beek, with whom I work, and with his team, of course, to create that awards. So let you explain what it is.
Thank you, Virginie. As we are the last thing between you and alcoholic beverages, as she said, we'll make this as quick as possible. My name is Adam Beek, and I'm the Managing Director and the head of Bank of the West Premium Wine Group, located here in Napa, and we are the sponsor of the Innovation Award. And before I go into that, I kind of wanted to give a little background as to how it came to be and why it came to be, and just kind of share the background around it. So Bank of the West and our parent bank, BNP Paribas, were the first or second largest lender to the wine business worldwide. And we're talking with our clients on a regular basis, and we hear about creative and innovative and interesting things they're doing in the vineyard or in the winery, and we find it really inspiring. And given our position in the industry, we felt like it was really important for us to help promote that. I mean, we are, in the second oldest business on earth, but we still have room to evolve and innovate. And so we want to make sure that we promote that and we put that out there. And we found that kind of the best way we hit upon to do that was to collaborate with Fruition Science and put together this Vintage Award and kind of help put out there the innovators and the people who are evolving the industry in terms of quality or in terms of sustainability or in whatever it is. We felt like it was really important to take our position and push that out there. So before I announce the judges, because what would an award be like this without judges, I wanted to give a shout out to a couple of people who really helped drive this process forward. And in spite of what all of you might think, creating an award like this is not an easy process from scratch. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of conference calls. It's a lot of cajoling. It's a lot of just working it to try to get people to get interested in this. And there's two people in this room who've really driven the process very hard. And the first works with me at Bank of the West. She's my senior relationship manager who covers Napa, and it's been a ton of hard work. In spite of all the time that she has spent doing her regular job, she has to take evenings and weekends to work on this. So Robin Wenzel, if you could stick your hand up, I really appreciate all the hard work that you've done on this. And as we are a profit-driven organization, if you have a loan, a need of a loan or need of capital, and you're in Napa, Robin Wenzel is the person to call, please. And then the second person is Virginie with Fruition Sciences, and she's done a ton of great work on this as well, so we really appreciate your work as well, Virginie, so thank you. So now I'm going to introduce the judges, and then the last person I introduce will come up here and give out the award. So the first judge who's been with us, unless you have quality judges who are recognized as industry experts, this whole thing doesn't work. And so we have a great panel of judges this year that we're very proud of. So for our third year in a row, the professor and chair of the Department of Viticulture and Enology at CSU Fresno, James A. Kennedy. Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy, Professor Kennedy. Our returning champion, last year's winner, Ian J. Gallo, the senior research scientist over there, Luis Sanchez. Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Representing the Napa Valley Vintners, the president and CEO, Linda Reef. Thank you, Linda, for all your hard work and who you are. The owner and vineyard manager of Mike Wolf Vineyard Services, Mike Wolf. And finally, the winemaker of Keplinger Wines, Helen Keplinger. Come on up. Come on up.
Thank you, Adam. So the judging panel, we met in early January, just a couple weeks ago, and we reviewed and discussed the papers. There were 5 this year, and we selected the finalists. So the 3 finalists are up here on the screen. From Robert Bialy Vineyards and Tres Sabores, submitted by Trace Getting, relating precision soil modeling and interactive visual analytics to wine quality. And then a joint submission from Monica Cooper and Sarah McDonald, using hyperspectral airborne imaging and applicating it for identifying areas with grapevine leaf roll disease and management. And then from Ridge Vineyards, also submitted in joint by Will Thomas and David Gates, vineyard leaf spore mapping. Sorry, vineyard level spore mapping. And the winner is, sorry about that.
Drum roll, please.
Monica Cooper and Sarah McDonald, the hyperspectral airborne imaging. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the judges and to Fruition Sciences and Bank of the West. To get my award? Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Okay. Thanks. Sorry. Not used to winning anything. Is it going to sit? Yeah. Okay.
Don't shake it.
Okay, so again, thank you to the judges, to Bank of the West, and to Fruition Sciences. I'd like to talk a little bit about our project. It's Sarah McDonald is there in the back. Thank you, Sarah, for all your work on this. And then, of course, this has also been a collaboration with Matthew and Melissa State at Vineview, Deborah Glina at UC Davis, and the man who started it all, who's Dr. Philip Fries. So, in just a little bit of background on leaf roll-associated viruses, there are 5 main viruses of concern. Of course, leaf roll-associated virus 3 is the most damaging, and that's the one that we focused on for this imaging project. The impacts of leaf roll-associated virus 3 include phloem degradation and decreases in net photosynthesis, leading to decreases in fruit quality and pigmentation, altered amino acid profiles, delayed maturity, yield reductions, and severe economic impacts. The virus moves around in vineyards in California by 4 mealybug species. It's also spread about by soft scale, but our mealybugs are our main vectors in California. And the ones that we have on the north coast include the grape mealybug and the vine mealybug most commonly. And so through all the work on leaf roll disease that's been done worldwide, one thing that's always comes to the top of important management strategy is to remove diseased vines. And the only way you can remove those diseased vines is if you can find them. And so you need, what's typically been done has been somebody like myself or an intern or somebody else out in the vineyard walking all of the rows, looking at some sort of map and saying, okay, that vine is diseased, that vine's not diseased, creating a map somewhat like what you see here. Of course, it takes expertise to recognize leaf roll disease symptoms. So it can be, in my experience, 2 to 3 years of training before somebody can really comfortably recognize those symptoms. They have to be distinguished from other symptoms and disorders, and just the whole training and the mapping process is labor intensive. So when we started this project, we were really looking for a way to find leaf roll diseased vines more easily. And so the way that we were able to do that was through hyperspectral imaging. And what Melissa stated is here, they are really the specialists in the imaging. And so she's going to talk a little bit about the imaging and what goes into imaging. And then I'll come back and talk about what we did with this project to show that our imaging and our visual mapping was consistent.
Okay, thanks, Monica. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what hyperspectral imaging is, and then some of the methods we used and some of the resulting maps. And I'll try to be quick here. So what is hyperspectral data? Well, this graph here shows hyperspectral data, and if you see the rainbow area indicates the visible region of the spectrum. That's what we see with our naked eye. Some of you are probably also familiar with multispectral data, and what we mean by multispectral is usually just 3 to 4 wavelengths, usually blue, green, red, and infrared. And these wavelengths are used to create various indices such as NDVI. Hyperspectral, on the other hand, includes hundreds to thousands of wavelengths, and that includes both within and beyond the visible spectrum. So the instrument we use to measure hyperspectral reflectance is a spectrometer. And so in this picture on the upper right corner, you can see us using a spectrometer to take a picture, essentially a picture, but it's a measurement of an individual spot or an individual leaf, and thereby producing this spectrum. So the first step in our project was to take measurements in the field and see if we could reproduce a study that was done at Washington State University. And I think some of the graphics are not on this image, so I'll try to wing it here. So what we did was we took some hyperspectral measurements of healthy vines. Oh, I see, okay. So what we did was we measured healthy vines, both symptomatic and asymptomatic, as well as we measured infected vines, both symptomatic and asymptomatic, as well as healthy vines. And what we found was that we could accurately discriminate the healthy from the unhealthy, similar to the previous study. We saw some changes in both the green peak, the near-infrared peak, and other portions of the spectrum. And we've, over the years, continued taking these measurements in various varietals of grapes. And what we found is that leaf roll symptoms don't present the same spectrum depending on the varietal. So there's a range of results depending on the varietal. And so we've sort of built up a library of what leaf roll looks like spectrally in different varietals. So the next step in the project was to fly over the vineyards with an imaging spectrometer. So this is a similar instrument as the handheld one, but this actually builds up an image. So as the plane flies over, it builds up a picture, which has the 2 dimensions of the ground, but the 3rd dimension is the hyperspectral data. And so once you get this data cube, we call it, you can point at any spot or any pixel on the ground and extract the the hyperspectral image of that area. And so in this case, we have a green vine shown in green on the graph and a infected vine shown in red on the graph. And so you can see they have different hyperspectral images there. And so, so this is now how we analyze the data. On the left is the visible color image, and on the right is the leaf roll map that we've produced using that hyperspectral data. And you can see on the left that you can't really tell where the infected vines are, whereas when we produce the map, you can easily see where the infection is. Those are the ones in red. And so we take an approach in which we use principal component analysis to identify spatial and spectral components in the image, and this is getting very technical. And then the resulting end members are compared to these spectral libraries that I talked about in the previous slide. And then we use that information to map back to the image, the leaf roll leaf roll infected vines. And so an advantage of this approach is that it's specific to a specific block and at the time of year that it was imaged. And this is just my last slide here showing how the power of early detection, that in this vineyard you can clearly see that the infection started in the lower portion of the block and has since spread up, and had that been detected earlier and the vines aggressively removed, the spread of that infection would have been more limited. Okay, so Monica's going to talk about the results.
Okay, so thank you, Melissa, for that. I have none of that expertise, so that's really important. So what we did for this project was we looked at 5 different Cabernet Sauvignon vineyards, and we got both the hyperspectral image that you see here, and then yours truly was out walking in the field generating maps, visual maps on the ground, and we compared those. And what you get when you compare those, when Sarah compares these, we see that the red vines are where the visual maps agree with the hyperspectral maps that there are diseased vines. The green vines that you see are where we agree that those are healthy vines, and all those yellow vines that you see are the ones where there's some disagreement between the visual mapping and the hyperspectral imaging. So when you look at all of that in table format, for these 5 vineyards, 3 of the vineyards we imaged in 2 years, and 1 of the vineyards we imaged only 1 year, you can see that in general, we agree on greater than 90% of the vines. So that includes both the diseased vines and the healthy vines. Whereas we have an 8%, 8.5 to 8% disagreement. Oh, there's a 9.6. Anyway, so it's pretty good statistics. It looks good if you look at that. You see, wow, 90% agreement. I'm pretty happy with that. However, if you look at this last column, it still means quite a few number of vines. So for a management company, we're still trying to figure out ways to even improve this technology. So we're looking at things that complicate detection. And so if you have a reduced canopy from say a trunk disease or Pierce's disease, that can confuse detection. If there's some overlap of the canopy, too much overlap, for instance, we have a particular block where we have very young blinds interplanted in an older vineyard, that can cause some conflict there. When there's co-infections with other viruses, such as in older vineyards, and also at the time of year that the imaging is done. And there is year-to-year, season-to-season variability in symptom expression. And as Melissa mentioned, there's an impact of grape variety. Just so you know that we are also comparing all of our stuff to laboratory analysis. So we are getting that for a subset of the vines, we are testing them to make sure that their analysis actually holds up, that they do have leaf roll 3. And what would we like to do in the future? Well, we're pretty happy with the fact that we have 90% agreement, but we always think that there's room for improvement. This tool we think is really useful when you don't have an expert. A lot of the leaf roll mapping has to be done in the fall, and that's a labor-intensive time in the vineyard, so you don't have time to train somebody to do that. We'd like to investigate other varieties, if there's any rootstock influence, other diseases. I've heard, of course, with all the Pierce's disease, that it would be great if we could image Pierce's disease. Could this be used in a nursery setting to improve the cleanliness of our nursery stock? Or could we actually mount this on a drone to get higher resolution and to improve timing? So there's plenty of work for any graduate students or postdocs who are interested in that. And then just in conclusion, I'd like to say this was a really great collaborative project, and thanks to all the vineyard people who let me into their vineyard to walk around and look at disease. Any questions? Come on, not even one.
Okay, so how many vines did you pull out then, and did you make any wine out of them?
Pulling out. Well, we weren't making management decisions based on this, so I was just looking at whether we have agreement and whether the technology can be used. And no, we didn't make any wines. Maybe next time. But there have been a lot of studies where people have made wines with leaf roll disease vines, and it never turns out well. Sorry. Leaf roll 3, that is, yeah. And it keeps spreading year to year, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you and congratulations.